You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Подача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0! Buffon shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on SouthamptonDelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show. No matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that you are doing all right. I know the world is still a crazy place. A lot of it is in upheaval, whether it's recovering from coronavirus or protesting for human rights, whatever it is. I hope that you're staying safe. I hope that you are well, and I hope that your family and everybody else is doing the same. That said, our family is growing, and no, I don't mean we're having a baby. I mean that there is a new patron of the show, so I would like to just take a second to say thank you to Tim Bizantz for joining the Patreon community. Tim now gets access to some additional content. He gets priority for having his questions answered on the show. And if he chooses, he can join a group chat, which is just for the patrons. Mostly recently, I don't know what we've been talking about, but it's been kind of entertaining, at least for me, which is probably not the point. But anyway, all of that is there. If you want to take advantage of that, it's patreon.com/SFC delivery. But thank you so much to Tim for joining. You didn't have to do that. Nobody has to do that, but you chose to, and I appreciate it. So Patreon just helps make sure that the show continues to be made. It helps pay for just the hosting and various things like that. But I do very much appreciate it. So thanks to all the patrons who are out there. I should say that more often. This week on the show, though, I am joined by Callum Wilson. You can find Callum Wilson on Twitter at CallumWilson21 and on Instagram at Callum_Wilson123. He is part of the team that helps bring you Saints AD commentary, and he's a co-host on the Under the Lights podcast with fellow Saints fan and commentator, and also a patron of the show, Tom Murray. So lots of patrons making things happen, which is super nice. So Callum and I we actually had news to talk about, which is a first. Football is going to come back. That is exciting, but actual things happen as well. Ralph and Long have new contracts. Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg does not have a new contract. There were some comments thrown around both by Ralph and the higher-ups in the club, and he even said some things, Hojbjerg himself, on the Ramble Meets podcast. So we discussed all of that and the ramping up of the Hartford Athletic partnership, the fixtures and all of that. I hope you'll enjoy it. It's a jam-packed kind of episode, a little bit longer than we've had in the past couple of weeks. But anyway, I hope that you enjoy it. Thanks again for joining the show. And let's get to it now. I'll talk to you on the other side. So we'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Callum Wilson. You can find him on Twitter at CallumWilson21 and on Instagram at Callum_Wilson123. He's part of the team that brings you Saints audio description commentary for all the Southampton home matches. And he's also part of the Under the Lights podcast. So Callum, welcome to the show. And we have some actual football news to talk about this week. So thanks for joining me and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Matt. Yes, there's a lot to talk about from a Saints perspective, but also we finally quenched the thirst for some Premier League football in what is it, just under a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, it's approaching very quickly, and for me, it's summer is officially started now. This is the first actual thing I've done on my summer vacation, so I'm excited, and it's tangible. Like I can see it now. I'm excited. I'm also nervous, and I don't know what to do because I haven't felt this way in several months. I've just been kind of like hoping for something to happen, and now it's here. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it actually.
Yeah, it's kind of like the beginning of the season again, isn't it? You get that kind of feeling for doing pre-season when you've been waiting over the summer for the new season to start. But we're just going to have so much football. I think we were going to be looking forward to the Euros starting on next Friday. So instead, obviously that was postponed, but at least we've got another kind of festival of football every single day to look forward to. And then before you know it, once this is done, it'll be maybe a month, and then the next Premier League season will hopefully be up and running.
Yeah, a lot of questions about the transfer window and contracts and everything else, and we'll just have to kind of see how it all works out. But I mean, for you, and this is not where we was going to start the show, but I think it just fits. Is in America, we have the opportunity to watch basically every game on TV for a very decent price if you live in America, and so for me, I can watch any game I want at any time. But you're going to have that option. Like, you're going to be able to watch most of the matches. And I mean, how are most people feeling about that? Or how are you feeling about that, at least in terms of the opportunity to kind of sit in front of a TV and watch, even though we can't be in the stadium?
Well, yeah, we can't wait because, it's our national sport. We've had zero sport for the last 3 months. And we didn't know if we'd have football at all. There was talk about just having the season null and voided, or points per game, and all of that. And obviously, everyone, the health and safety of everyone is clearly the primary objective. But if it means that we're able to get football up and running, which it seems that we are, then everyone's absolutely buzzing to get that back on. We can't go in the stadiums, but I think just from a fan point of view, we're looking forward to being able to watch any football, let alone getting the fix that we're going to be able to. You guys have got it better than we have. It's the English Premier League, but America has the option to watch every single game. Whereas, you'll probably be well aware, Matt, but you have to pay for a package a lot more expensive than the one you have to use over there. And we'll have to buy multiple TV packages because it's over multiple broadcasters, and you'll get maybe 3 or 4 games a weekend, and perhaps the odd sort of European football in the week across Sky and BT. But in terms of free-to-air television, there isn't any. You watch Match of the Day on a Saturday, and you'll get the odd FA Cup games and internationals, but that's it. So this is quite a unique set of circumstances in which I think about 80% of the games are going to be available for the Great British public to watch free of charge, and that's obviously to try and help with the general mental health and just realising that money isn't the be-all and end-all when it comes to football. They're getting the games back on, but if us fans can't be at the stadium, then it's only fair to try and give us a way in which we can watch the Premier League.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, it doesn't compare to being in the stadium at all, and I don't think anybody thinks it does. But I don't know. It's what you guys have to go through in terms of just to watch a game is you guys put up with a lot more than we do, and it's actually, I mean, honestly, easier to watch the Premier League here than it is to watch, some of the sports that we have here, because we don't, nothing on the Premier League is blacked out. Generally what we have because you guys have like the 3 p.m. kind of like blackout on a Saturday where no games can be televised. We here have regional blackouts, so like you can't watch your local team on TV in many instances because they want you there at the game. But for me, a local blackout means that it's 3.5 hours to the team. So it's like I'm not going down there on a Wednesday afternoon to watch the team. It's just not a thing. But yeah,
it's mad, really.
Yeah. So it's anyway. But football is back, and Saints will open up with Norwich on Friday. I believe it's 6 p.m. kickoff for you, so 10 a.m. for me. And then we'll move on from there, home to Arsenal and then away to Watford. So we'll kind of keep it going. And I guess football is just going to be kind of they're staggering the start times for you guys. So like almost every game, like you said, will be on for you to watch and consume, and hopefully watch Saints pick up some points and get over the the 36 or 40 point mark or whatever it is we need to get so we can be safe and just move on.
Yeah, I think a 10 a.m. start is a lot nicer for you than the usual 7 a.m. start. So that works quite nicely with the first game for you over on the West Coast. But I think it's like you said, they could have had a load of games on at 3 o'clock and maybe just put one on television. But I think they're staggering them. I think you can get about 5 on a Saturday, maybe 4 on a Sunday, which is like back to back, sort of 12 p.m., 2 p.m., 4, 6, and 8, or something like that, which is going to be pretty good, and you won't have to sit and listen to the pundits talking for hours beforehand either. You'll be going from one straight into the other. It's interesting you say about the next 3 games that we've got being Norwich away, Arsenal home, and Watford away, but they're not. You kind of put an asterisk next to the home and away because I'm not sure how much of, especially looking at the way the Bundesliga was going. I'm not sure if you can really take that much home advantage, and if anything, it'd be interesting to see if that's an advantage for Saints because obviously the home form hasn't really been there.
Yeah, we've really struggled to pick up points at home for several seasons now, and you kind of wonder like what teams are going to suffer the most as a result of their fans not being kind of in the stadium. And you can make jokes about, Arsenal's generally empty anyway. The Emirates isn't normally full, so they'll feel right at home. But you wonder about some of those other teams that may suffer. And I think, like you said, we may just be all right. Like it should just be okay for us. Although I will say that our away support is fantastic, and I think you know better than I would, but I think the home support is coming along, and especially under Ralph, I think people have been, I guess, a little happier to watch the football that we've played for the most part. But like I said, you would know better than I.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. To be honest, I think there was a lull in kind of atmosphere that went along with the lack of points home and away under Pellegrino and Hughes, and even before that with Puel. I think with the style of play of those 3 managers as well, it wasn't since Koeman where we were playing well, we were playing attractive attacking football. We had really exciting players, and we were winning more football matches more regularly than we ever have. So and the same with Pochettino, and obviously before that our march up the leagues with Adkins. So there was a bit of a lull between sort of 2016 and 2018 maybe, and then Ralph came in, reignited maybe some excitement and some passion with the fans in terms of, they'll be there and they'll watch their team week in, week out, but sometimes you can find yourself watching a really poor team and not being enthused by it. And I think a lot of the time the players can ignite something in the fans, and if a chance or some sort of excitement or a quick breakaway, or maybe a player puts in even a really good sliding tackle, and suddenly everyone that breeds enthusiasm in the crowd. Whereas I think for a few years it had to be the other way, and the crowd were trying to find a way to ignite something in the players and the way in which we were playing. But yeah, certainly under Ralph, although the home form in terms of points is still not where we want it to be, and the fortress of St Mary's has been sort of 5-6 years ago. I think that could come, and maybe it will take this kind of behind closed doors situation to get us a few wins at St Mary's and maybe get rid of that stigma, and then when fans are allowed back in, to go from there, because I do think it just snowballs in the players' minds.
Yeah,
the longer it goes on.
Yeah, eventually you need something to break that cycle. And I think the fans have done a lot. I think the fans stuck with it as long as they could, and at some point the team's got to come about and kind of earn that respect and that support back, and that's their job. But I think Ralph understands that, and I think Ralph's trying to do that, and that is what it is. But
absolutely right. I think you're right in saying, I was going to say the same thing. I think Hasenhuttl has been a big part in that as well, because when he came in, his initial focus was on building that relationship with the fans, and and the community and the club, and bringing everyone together and putting us on the same page and the same direction. So and the fans absolutely love him.
Yeah, it's been good, and we'll come on to talk about his contract in just a moment.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, you're a Saints fan, and obviously you're a commentator as well for the audio description commentary. But I mean, what's your kind of early Saints memory? When did you start going to games, or did you grow up in Southampton? Is that how it kind of came about, or how'd that work?
Yeah, born and bred in Southampton. I've lived here all my life. I suppose a slight confession would be that when I was younger and I first got into football, as probably the case for most football fans in England, it was all about Manchester United. And I remember having for my sins, having a Man United shirt, and sort of when they won the treble, I was, I wasn't a supporter. I was a kid that liked, David Beckham and that kind of thing. So my earliest memory of watching football, we always used to play it in kids clubs and things when I was smaller, but was the France '98 World Cup, and I remember sort of having the wall chart. My parents had got me a wall chart, and I was kind of filling in the scores as we went along, and of course, England. I remember watching those games, some of those games at school, and I would have been sort of 7, and obviously the goal, the Michael Owen goal against Argentina, and that kind of penalty shootout. I was just too young for Euro '96, which obviously was the big one, and they played the whole tournament on terrestrial television during this lockdown, so I've been able to go back and watch some of those games again. But yeah, that sort of '98 season, I got into football, and then after that, my dad would take me down to the Dale. I think from the following season, I think it must have been 98, 99, sort of first live football match that I went to watch. And although I was kind of my friends and supporting Manchester United and England, and I liked that treble winning side, I was going to games with my dad and obviously had that soft spot for Saints. And after not too long, sense prevailed, and I followed the Saints, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah, I think I say it more often than I probably should, but it used to surprise me when people said, "Yeah, actually, I supported Liverpool or Man United, or I liked them as a child." But I think, like, so many people have said that's just normal. Like, it's just, they're the ones who do get on TV, who you get to see quite often, especially when when the FA Cup was the only game on and they were in it. Like, that's what it is, and that's what you see. And as a child, I'm sure staying up for Match of the Day, if they're on first, you might catch that one before you fall asleep or whatever. But that's
true.
It all makes sense, because it's the same thing here in the United States. Like, we have teams, spread all over the country, and you see certain teams more than others. Like, everybody knows the Yankees. There's Yankee fans everywhere. There's Red Sox fans everywhere. There's even Dodger fans everywhere. But very few people like the Texas Rangers, like, unless you're from Texas, or like, that's just the way it works. So yeah.
I think if you I think it's quite plain and simple as well. Unless you have a family who are avid supporters of a football team and just follow in those footsteps. I mean, my dad was a Southampton fan, but he'd never regularly attended football. He wasn't into football until I was old enough and showed an interest, and then, which is quite nice, because we were able to just go and experience the same games in the same sort of era as each other. But when you're a child and you don't have that kind of avid football family, and you're automatically into a team, then you watch the teams, as you said, the ones that are playing all the time, but the ones that are winning, you don't have a loyalty to anyone. So if you see players like Manchester United had, and you're going outside on the playground, you're not trying to emulate the guy who's picking the ball out of his net. You're trying to emulate the guy who's just scored this goal, this free kick, or this header, and Man United at that time in the late 90s were the team that were doing that. But once you do start getting exposed to live football at somewhere like the Dow, which is just such a unique environment, then you soon realise that's what you want to sit on your sofa and try and watch as many Man United games as you can from on television, or do you want to be in amongst the community and see some live football matches? It's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot different being under the lights than it is sitting in front of the television. So we should mention, obviously, you do a podcast as well. And I mean, you haven't been able to do the commentary stuff because obviously there's no home games right now. There's no fans in the stadium, so you guys won't be doing that. But you do have the podcast, and I guess, how's the podcast going during this time? I mean, you guys are still recording episodes and doing stuff. I think you guys have a new episode out just a couple of days ago by the time people are listening to this. But you want to just fill us in on that real quick?
Yeah. So me and Tom, you've had Tom Murray on the show before. Me and Tom, part of a team of 4 that do the audio description at St Mary's, and obviously that for obvious reasons hasn't been happening since lockdown, since the end of the Premier League. But we have great fun doing that, and we often we always spend sort of a good 40 minutes before kickoff talking to our listeners and just discussing the teams, just discussing anything that had happened from a Saints perspective during the week, and myself and Tom really enjoyed that side of things in the kind of build up to the match as well. And with podcasts really developing and becoming a huge thing in society at the moment, we thought we'd make one of our own. And I mean, our slogan is all things football, all things Saints. We like to talk about football generally and the Premier League on the whole, because it's such a huge thing over here, and we follow it. But then we kind of have a segment we call Kingsland Corner, whereby we talk specifically about Southampton Football Club, and I think there's a niche of people, as you well know, that want to listen to that kind of thing, because you don't really hear a team like Southampton in that much detail being talked about in the kind of general media. So yeah, we have great fun. We're doing it a lot more regularly. We started at the beginning of the season, actually, during pre-season, and for multiple reasons it kind of tailed off for a bit, and we had other things going on. But once lockdown happened, I kind of said to Tom that let's get going on this again, because we can do it via satellite. We can do it over the phone and do it more regularly, and we're really enjoying making the content and just talking about it.
Yeah, I feel like the lockdown was actually kind of the great kind of podcast equalizer in terms of audio quality. All of a sudden, all these big name podcasts were sounding like they were recording in a tunnel, and made me laugh, because it's like, man, once I obviously have to do this remotely. I think I've only ever recorded 2 or 3 episodes in person, really. So to hear the Guardian Football Weekly sound like it was being shouted through a tin can phone was nice, and they've kind of leveled it out, and the audio quality is, like we talked about earlier, a little bit different, but really, like, it's the technology's out there and kind of accessible enough that you can make it sound decent enough, and with everything else kind of sounding the same, it makes it way better.
Yeah, you're right. It is quite funny watching the top. You'll have ESPN, we'll have sort of Sky Sports, and seeing a split screen of 4 people. We have Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville, Jamie Redknapp kind of talking to a presenter with a webcam set up in the front room, and it sounds, like you said, it sounds like they're underwater, and you're kind of thinking, well, it's not that simple without a big studio setup, is it? So
yeah.
I like what you said. Yeah, it has very much been the podcast equalizer. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's been, routines are out the window at this point. So podcast listening is definitely changed. I know I pay way too much attention to like industry ups and downs and things like that. And so I try not to talk about it. I have a note here that says don't talk about it, and I'm reading it and talking about it at the same time. So it's not great. But yeah, I mean, we have kind of a lot, like we said, a lot of stuff to talk about. And I guess the biggest news is Ralph Hasenhuttl contract. And we kind of mentioned his relationship with the fans, the way he's trying to build that. And now, 4 more years. In America, we say 4 more years, and that generally means you would be voting for Trump, and which is not at all what we're advocating for here. But managers don't always see out the contracts, but 4 more years. And just to you, what's your initial reaction to him signing that contract?
Oh well, it's a huge positive, isn't it? But no one can deny that Ralph Hasenhuttl is such a fantastic manager, and you can see the signs of what he's rescuing and developing and building within the club, and it looks to be in a long-term strategy when you see about the kind of playbook that he's created, which everyone's kind of talking about as being this fantastic new way of synchronizing a philosophy within an entire football club through the academy. He's really trying to create a legacy, and he often talks about the journey that he wants to come on with the club. And I don't think there's anyone really better that Southampton would want to replace him with. So to tie him down to a deal is important, because obviously we've seen with Southampton it goes one of two ways. Either you do fantastically and your manager gets poached, or you do pretty poorly and you have to make a change yourself and get rid of the manager. There's a very small area around kind of that mid-table between maybe 9th and 15th, 16th, whereby if you're constantly around there, then that's where you're probably going to get a bit of longevity with managers, which we've not seen for a while. I fully expect over the years and over the seasons for Ralph to take us upwards gradually. He's clearly evidencing that philosophy in the Southampton way with his emphasis on youth and the kind of signings he's making. He seems to be very strict on what specific things he's looking for and the way in which they play football. Earlier on in the season, it was a poor start, and we were hoping to really see a Ralph Hasenhuttl team, and we weren't. We were seeing him plugging holes because of a lack of transfer activity. But once he went back to what he knew, and he lost that kind of fear of failure and started looking to win football matches with his high pressing and attacking football, and putting Shane Long up there with Danny Ings and pressing from the front, and all of a sudden our fortunes changed. So yeah, it's great to get him on board for 4 years. We're being naive if we think that means that we're going to keep him for 4 years. What it just means that if he does do exceptionally well, like the likes of Koeman and Pochettino, and someone does come in and take him, then at least we get a little bit of money for it. But I think looking ahead, it's great to see him putting pen to paper and showing us that he fully intends to progress this football club.
Yeah, and you look at his kind of actions and his words when he came in, and there are no guarantees. And I think he even understood that it would be kind of rough going. And I'm not sure that it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. But the idea that we're very clear on what we want from transfers, and whether that comes from the club saying this is what we have money for and this is where we'd like to go, or whether it's Ralph kind of directing that, I'm not sure. But I think as long as everybody is clear as to where they're going and what they want, I think it's going to make the transition in the future kind of better. And I hope that it continues kind of after he's gone, because as you said, there is the possibility that somebody comes in and takes him from us, and I'm not sure he would leave. I don't think he would just leave for anybody. I think it would have to be one of those jobs where you look at it and say, like, yeah, you should probably go there at this point. But hopefully the blueprint that's laid out after that, can be followed by whoever comes in, and it doesn't have to change every time we have a manager. And I think that so many football clubs have this idea where the manager comes in and they have to purchase the players that they want to play the football they want. And then the next time it comes in, everything has to change. And we've kind of gotten ourselves in trouble over the past couple of years. I think we've gotten away from a kind of style of play, in that switch between Koeman and everybody who's come after him has just been kind of a mess. And so to get back to a clear kind of consistent plan all the way through the academy to be able to bring players forward, I think is a huge plus for us kind of going forward. So, and I guess moving forward with that, Hasenhuttl signs the new contract. there was talk that we wouldn't have any new contracts until we got to 36 points. I didn't necessarily expect that first contract to be handed out. Obviously the 36 points isn't there yet because we're not playing all this other stuff. But Shane Long just signed a contract extension as the first player after Ralph Hasenhuttl signs his. I think that's gonna, if Hasenhuttl's contract was going to kind of unify the fan base, Shane Long might be one of those ones where it doesn't exactly do that. And although Ralph, I think, has made a case for Shane Long being in the team each and every week, and had other managers kind of put him in as often as Ralph has, people would complain, but Ralph does it. And I think, once again, the idea is clear enough. The partnership with Danny Ings is clear enough that most people maybe would give Ralph a little bit of leeway. But what's your thoughts on Long sticking around now for 2 more years?
Yeah, I think it's actually a really positive move. It's interesting what you say, because I think there's a phrase over here that we say he's like Marmite, which is you know what Marmite is?
I do. I've only ever had Vegemite because somebody from Australia sent it to me.
Somewhat similar, but the idea being that half the people love it and half the people hate it. You never have someone who kind of doesn't mind it. And I think and sometimes Shane Long's been, hate's a strong word, but there are people in the pro Shane Long camp and the anti Shane Long camp. People will understand what he does for the club and think he's really important for the team, and other people will say, well, he's a striker who doesn't score goals. But I think that this has been his best season in a Saints shirt by far. It's the first time since he joined us in about 2014, I think, with Koeman. I think it's the first time that he's actually cemented his name on the team sheet. Mm-hmm. And it comes as no surprise, because he is exactly the sort of player that Ralph Hasenhuttl wants in his team. Pressing from the front, I can maybe think of Jamie Vardy, but I couldn't think of anyone else that may be better than Shane Long applying that kind of pressure. He works his socks off for the team, and I think as soon as Ralph gave up on the three at the back and went with his trusted 4-2-2-2 formation, Shane Long was the main beneficiary of that, because it meant that he could partner someone up front. And Shane Long will never be a lone striker, because your lone striker needs to be someone who's going to get you 10-15 goals a season, and Shane Long's not that man. So he'd often be playing out on the right wing because he tracks back. But I think he is perfect as a second striker, and I think Danny Ings and himself have really enjoyed playing together. He's been great foil for Danny Ings to get so many goals. And actually, Shane Long, before the season kind of paused, he was on a decent little run of scoring, when he may have gone a lot of games without scoring. Then suddenly this season he's hitting some purple patches. So I think personally, Southampton played better when Shane Long's in the team, and he may not have the stats that people would want, and he may not be someone you put in your fantasy football team, but the players around him and the team actually perform better in Ralph's style when Shane Long's playing. I'm sure of that, because I've seen it with my own eyes and a number of different occasions. He offers so much more than just scoring. I think if Shane Long could finish regularly, he would be a really, really top striker. Because he's quick, he jumps. He's probably quicker than most, and there aren't many players quicker than Shane Long in the league. I think he jumps higher than anyone in the league.
Yeah. I
mean, aerially, he's massively underrated. He works so hard, and actually, what people don't give him credit for is technically he is really good. The amount of times I've seen a long ball over the top where we're penned inside our own box, and obviously he's the out ball. Someone will hit a ball over and he'll run down. It will come over from behind him, over his left shoulder, mm-hmm. and he'll bring it down with one touch, which is just an incredibly difficult skill.
Yeah. And
I've seen him do it so many times. So he does offer so much. If he could score goals, we'd have a really, really decent striker on our hands. But he's 33, a 2-year deal, playing well. And like you said, we would have waited for the 36 points. We're on 34 points. And with with the whole lockdown situation and no football matches, he wouldn't have been able to play for us because he'd been out of contract by the end of June. So it makes sense to do it now.
Yeah. I mean, and the goals haven't really come, like, you have to go all the way back to the 15-16 season for the last time I think he scored more than 10 goals. But as you said, if he was finishing, in any kind of consistent fashion, he just wouldn't be affordable. Like, he would be gone. And because he has all those other
top six club. He'd be at a top six club for sure. And he's he comes across as a really decent bloke, and I think he's liked by the fans for that. But also, he might not score many goals, but he can score goals inside 8 seconds. And I think the goal that he scored against Liverpool is obviously iconic. I think that's probably done him some favours in terms of cult status amongst Saints fans. So that definitely works in Shane Long's favour.
That goal makes me like that shirt more.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
That when I see that shirt, when I wear that shirt, that's the match I think about. And I also remember conveniently scheduling a doctor's appointment that day so I could be off for the whole day, so I can go home and watch that match. And I remember just being that whole night just tense and waiting, and then I was kind of like, he as we're on that break, it's like, Hojbjerg's to one side, Long's to the other, and you're like, I don't know who you pass it to here, but he made the right decision. So
yeah, not the greatest options, but I definitely think Long would have been the right one. We'll talk about Hojbjerg, I'm sure, soon. But yeah, I just remember being absolutely drenched in alcohol, some my own and some from all sorts of other people, because we were in a pub watching that. Obviously went to the game at St Mary's. Redmond scored 1-0, and you're thinking, is that going to be enough to take to Anfield? And I remember Fraser Forster almost dropping the ball over his own goal line and just clawing it back, and then really we were just inside our own box, and then Sims breaks away. I don't know if you've ever seen it on YouTube, but someone done it to a few moments. I think someone's put Titanic music to that Shane Long goal, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it'll bring it'll bring tears to your eyes.
It just adds something. But yeah, when he scores that goal and it's all over, and you might have seen over there when the 2018 World Cup was going on and England did so well, and it was so hot over. Every time a goal would go in sort of fan parks, you just see beer fly everywhere, and that was what it was like for that goal. Except we were in a small pub that was overcrowded, and it got messy, but. Those are the sorts of moments that you sit through the crappy losses and the wet nights and the rain and all that rubbish to be able to watch those sorts of moments. So, Ralph Hasenhuttl, Shane Long, 2 ticks, pretty positive week, I'd say.
Yeah, and then we get on to a different sort of player at the kind of the opposite end of his career, still very young. Hojbjerg, coming to the end of his contract and doesn't look like he's going to sign an extension. It's difficult, I guess, to kind of be fair to him in terms of, I guess he's got ambition for his career and he wants his career to go a certain way. And we kind of talked before, we both listened to the Ramble podcast and the Football Ramble, and they have this thing called Ramble Meets, and I have to give a shout out to the guys, the patrons of the show, who was Kevin McGee, who put that into the group and said, like, I'm looking forward to Hojbjerg being on there, because I don't listen to the Football Ramble very often, but listening to that, he admits that he was a little bit kind of immature at times. Maybe he made decisions too quickly, and then when I hear him say that, and like he wants to move forward with his career, like I wonder if he's doing the same thing now again, where he thinks he's grown up and he thinks he's making a little bit more of a mature decision. I think realistically he could sign a contract extension with us for two years maybe, and then have by that point be ready for really the prime of his career to go elsewhere if he wanted to do that. And I'm not sure how Saints fans would feel about that. I'm not sure how even I would feel about that. But I think as the captain, and Ralph has mentioned also that you can't you can't be the captain if we're not sure if you're staying. That this doesn't work. And I like that Ralph has come out with that, and that might cause some tension. But what's your reading of the Hojbjerg situation? And him kind of not signing a contract.
I think, in what you just said, there are probably 3 or 4 different questions. One being, is he good enough to leave us? One being the captaincy and Ralph's comments, and then another being sort of whether I'm unsure if this is being blown out of proportion or not. Because when you read an article, and I'm glad you forwarded over that podcast for me to listen to yesterday, because when you read the article and you see sort of quotes, you know what the media's like. They take a 45-minute conversation, low-key conversation as it was, and take a couple of points, I think, out of context. When I read what he'd said, I thought, okay, well, that's not great for your captain. But actually, I don't necessarily think he's fishing for a move. The fact that he hasn't signed a contract yet. How long has the contract been on the table? Because we apparently have been waiting until the 36 points for Shane Long, who's running out of a contract in 3 weeks, whereas Hojbjerg's got a year on top of that. So what Hasenhuttl says is correct. If he's not going to sign a contract with a year left, we have to sell him, because that's the way the club works. We get money for our players. We're not going to do what Arsenal do and let them see out their contract of every single player until there's a couple of weeks left, and then either get nothing for them or pay them way over what they should be getting.
Right.
With Hojbjerg, I think clearly, I don't think anyone has a higher perception or opinion of Hojbjerg than Hojbjerg himself. And what I mean by that is, I think he rates himself, and I think maybe he rates himself higher than he is at this point in time. But maybe you can't blame someone who, as an 18-year-old kid, has the best manager in the world come up to him and say, "You're the future star of this Bayern Munich team." And Pep Guardiola, I haven't read his book, but apparently in his book cites that he said that to Hojbjerg. Yeah. So, your head's going to get pretty big at that point. And I think that, maybe he looks back and thinks, you know what, maybe I was a bit hasty. I could have stayed a couple more years. They have a clear development program at Bayern, and he saw other players getting regular game time, and he's a footballer and he wanted to play football. Fair enough. So he takes quite a significant drop from Bayern Munich to Southampton, let's be honest. And when he first played for us, I couldn't see a place in the team for him. Right. We had, I can't remember who the players that we had, but I think we had Romeo and Ward-Prowse. I think Lamino had just come in at that point and looked good. We may have had, I think Schneiderlin might have gone by that point, but there are a couple more, and we've always been strong central midfield, and he couldn't get in the team. And if you move from Bayern because you can't get in the team to Southampton, and you can't get in the team, then there's some issues there for you. But obviously, he's the sort of player that Hasenhuttl rates. My opinion of Hojbjerg actually is, if he left, if we got 25 million for Hojbjerg, I'd take it. And I think he's a player that you can replace. He's a ball-winning midfielder who encourages players around him. When he gets in the final third, I think he's got on a number of occasions I've seen, he's got a distinct lack of composure, like an obvious lack of composure. He sort of snatches at things. Maybe he's that sort of player with Hojbjerg. He's great at winning the ball and suddenly we're on a counter-attack. Mm-hmm. But what you want is someone next to him 5 yards so he can go, here you go, you do the next bit. Yeah. Because he'll come towards the edge of the box and there'll be a player to his left, to his right. We talked about that Liverpool one, for instance. If it wasn't Sims and Hojbjerg were the other way around and Hojbjerg had the ball, the amount of times he would not lay it off to the right player, or he'd give the ball away, or maybe he'd shoot and right. it would go into row Z. That's not what his game is. And I think those are the players that you find difficult to replace. The Manes, the Tadic's, the Lallanas, those kind of players. I think with Hojbjerg, I think if we got that money for him with a year left on his contract, we'd take it, we'd reinvest some of it, and we'd probably get a player that can do what he does for half the fee. What he has said himself, he said in that podcast actually, was that his best attribute is improving players around him. And I think that's what we would lose, is clearly someone with a really high expectation of himself and the players around him, someone who can motivate and influence the young squad around him, and is clearly a natural leader. And that's his main attribute. That's what he said his main strength is. And that's why he's captain.
Yeah.
And we don't have many players like that at Southampton. And I think the fact also that I think there's a stat saying that he's won the ball in the central third of the pitch more times than any other player in the Premier League at any club.
Yeah.
And I think it was something like 31 more times than second place. Like, he's well out. Like, that's what he does well. Mm-hmm. And that's what Hasenhuttl wants from his central midfielders. And Ward-Prowse will be up there in the top 3 or 4 with that stat as well. I just think if he's not going to sign a contract and he went, I wouldn't be as bothered as I was about Schneiderlin or Wanyama leaving, for instance, because I think they've just got more to their game. I listened to the podcast we did with Tom a few weeks back, and one of the questions was rate these 5 central midfielders. If you remember, I think it was Hojbjerg, Romeu, Ward-Prowse, Wanyama, and Schneiderlin. Uh-huh. And I listened to that, and I put Hojbjerg at the lower end, to be honest. So yeah, that might be a scathing. You know, he does things well, but so many times I see him on the ball when he passes backwards or something, and I think, come on, you're better than that.
Yeah.
And there are other players that can do that. I think Ralph's. I don't know what you think about how Ralph's handled it. I think it's brilliant the way he came out, and essentially has said, look, if he doesn't want to sign a contract, then he can't be captain, because he can't lead a load of players if he hasn't committed his future to the club. I mean, that's a really strong bit of management, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've been really happy with Ralph with is how open and honest he's been, kind of, with most of the media. He doesn't hide things. If he doesn't want to talk about something, he just say, I'm not talking about it. But to be that clear with the expectation, then you give somebody the opportunity to make a choice. And I think I have a hard time with that, because it's I'm just not that kind of person. But Ralph doesn't seem to be bothered by those things, and I think as long as that's not the first time Hojbjerg has heard that, as long as he's not hearing that in the media for the first time, then I think it's fine. And I'm definitely behind it. I just hope that the communication behind the scenes is happening, just because I think that will allow things to move forward. And there's a lot of evidence, circumstantial evidence, I guess, that Hojbjerg is maybe at least thinking about the future. I think he's changed agents in the recent past. I think he's more prevalent on social media now. He's almost like he's starting to build himself up a little bit. And for me, like, I look at that and go, like, that's great, but also, like, are you hoping to be a star at some point? And there's nothing wrong with that, and we can't criticize him necessarily for wanting that. Football's a short career, and having been at Bayern and been told by Pep Guardiola, like, you're going to be great, or you are the next great thing, like, maybe you want to fulfill that. And I think that it takes some belief, especially at this level, to make sure that happens. And so he may try it. I may not agree with it, but I think he may, as he goes forward, be looking for that. And you know what, I wish him the best. I think there are definitely things he can improve on. And I think, as you said, maybe the one thing we'll really miss is him winning the ball back in the middle of the field. Yeah, he tends to win the ball back, make a short pass, and then basically tell everybody to calm down. And that's why I think so often that short passes goes back to Jack Stevens or whatever, or just straight sideways, and just wants everybody to get set. And whether that's Ralph's instructions to him, I'm not sure, but we'll have to kind of wait and see how it pans out. And I will also say that he won me over before he was ever captain in terms of when we were going through all of those bad results, and he was the one that was willing to go get in front of the camera and talk.
Yeah.
Like that to me.
He speaks well, doesn't he?
Yeah, that shows that he wants that leadership role. And I don't think that he's getting in front of there because he wants to be a star. I think he's getting in front of there because it's the right thing to do, and he will take the heat and he will stand up for the team. And to me, that's where he's got it right. And so
and he's always shown that he's got high standards as well. He's always shown that he's got high standards when he's had those interviews, because they've often been on Sky or BBC or whatever, and they've said we've often had that and then said, oh wow, that's really refreshing. You don't often hear, they've got media training and they usually say the right things or some cliches or give you a Haaland level of detail in their answers. But I think with Hojbjerg, he says exactly what he feels, and there can be a lot of admiration for that. I think you're right in that. It's no secret that he wants to be at the very top. But I mean, what me and you don't know is like you said, the conversations had between him and Ralph and the club. I mean, he quoted, the club knows what I want, and clearly Ralph Hasenhuttl knows what he wants if he's going to come out and say no contract, no captaincy. So if he's refused to sign a contract, then there's a completely different story. But from what we heard in that interview, and that's the reason this has all sort of come about, he said that he wants to be at the top. He wants to be winning leagues and Champions Leagues, having left Bayern Munich. But he also kept mentioning 15 years, and he's got 15 years to do that. And from when he left, and he's only 24. So I wouldn't take from that too much that he is desperate right now to go to a top club. I think he wants to build himself, and he knows he can keep progressing in areas. He's brilliant in other areas that we've mentioned, and I think he wants to get to that level. He's not at that level right now, and I also don't see, especially in England, who at that level is going to go and sign him to play in their team. The massive link is Tottenham, but then the other day we find out that they've taken a huge loan because the coronavirus has hit just after they've got that stadium, and they need, they're not going to be spending any money on players. So are they going to come in with a low ball offer because he's got 12 months left in his contract? I don't think Saints will accept it. The other team is Everton. You're not winning a Champions League with Everton. So, you're not winning any trophies with Tottenham either, let's be honest. Yeah. So I think you're right in why doesn't he just say, you know what, I'll sign even a year extension. So he's got 2 years from now, and then we'll revisit it next year. But he's not there yet. And I think if he stayed with Saints, we're on an upward trajectory. The last few seasons, he's been digging in and trying to get us out of a relegation fight. If he helps lead us as a captain to a top 8 finish, then suddenly some of our players will be looked at again. And in the history, Saints have been known to buy players and create really good players by developing them, and other clubs then come along and pay the money for them. So yeah, I'd say he's not there yet. He's only young. Just wait a couple of years. But I'm not in this position, and if Tottenham did stump up the money, you'd have to think, would that be a good move for him? But I think we've got a ready-made captain in James Ward-Prowse stood right next to him doing some of the things that he does and providing a goal threat. So I'd have no doubt that he would be the man that would step into those shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as this one, we're going to watch it play out, and hopefully there is some resolution, even if it is that he is going to leave. Then so be it. That is what it is. And the only unfortunate thing is the coronavirus is going to impact the price of players and what their kind of value in the transfer market. So we may not get what we think is worth it for us, but that's just kind of how things are going to go. And you talked about Tottenham having to take the loan and things like that. Like they were there is, match day income is not the biggest source of income for a lot of teams in the Premier League, just simply because the TV rights deals are so much. But when you sign or build the big stadium like that the extra kind of 20,000 people in the stadium is a big deal, and so many of those seats are going to be those luxury boxes or the corporate boxes that those tickets are outrageously expensive, and a lot of money is going to come in from there. So they were planning on that in order to kind of make this run and put them up there to be able to compete with teams like Manchester City and things like that in terms of match day income and just revenue in general. And they're going to be impacted by this, in a much different way than Bournemouth, who, it's 11,000 seats, so what? Like that money doesn't matter all that much.
Yeah, you get 62,000 seat a stadium, playing a game every other week and getting a revenue through that. I haven't been to the stadium, but I've heard that it's the future really of stadiums, and this next level in terms of boxes and things like that. But they're also, they look like they were going to be holding the next Anthony Joshua boxing fight as well. I imagine many concerts, that was built not just with football in mind. I know the Raiders, I think the Raiders played there, didn't they? And they were looking for that to be a potential second stadium behind Wembley in kind of NFL matches. So, there's clearly a global and sort of multiple sports and music and everything else. There was a thought process behind that and a plan for a lot of money they've spent on the stadium, and suddenly they can't do any of it.
Yeah, best laid plans kind of go to waste. So let's move on towards some listener questions. We have a couple. We'll get to a question from Justin Woodward, who's one of the patrons, to go with this from Luke Millard. He says, also a question for the next show. Can you explain in the American soccer scene where Hartford falls into it? Because Saints have once again increased their athletic partnership, or their partnership with Hartford Athletic, who is a team that plays in the second division of the U.S. kind of soccer tier, or soccer, whatever you want to call it, pyramid. There is no promotion relegation in the United States, so they are staying there. They won't be promoted to MLS unless they, stump up and pay the money. But quite frankly, they just haven't been that good. So I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. But basically, they play on the East Coast, and the second division of U.S. soccer is split between East and West. So there's an East Division and a West Division. They play in the East. They finished, I think, second bottom last season. If you combine the two kind of divisions, if you combine East and West, they finished third bottom. So not the best kind of show for them. But obviously, Jahidi's over there as the head coach. Tariq Johnson's over there on loan. So they are starting to practice and starting to train again to get back to playing. But once again, not a soccer hotbed, not the greatest thing ever. But that I guess that partnership, being able to send over some training and send over some ideas. Obviously, we have player on loan there and a manager over there. Maybe that just helps us build a scouting network here in the United States, which is maybe the next place that Saints will look to get players before they become kind of more well known to some of the bigger teams. Which, if you look at some of the players that we've had that we've done the best with, it's picking up guys who were playing in lesser leagues, who were doing really well, who fit the kind of the mold that we wanted. We come in, they play for a couple of years, and they move on. If we're looking to do that in the United States, I guess this would be the start. I would have probably picked the team in California, just one, because the weather's better, two, because there are certain places in the country where soccer is really, or football is really big, and Southern California is one of them. But then maybe you also run into competing with the likes of LA Galaxy and other things that maybe you just don't want to do. So I don't know, for you, is this a big deal, the increase in partnership, or is it just kind of more of the same, and the club needed something to talk about?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't really know too much about this. I knew we'd be talking about it on the podcast, so I had a look at the article on Saints website, and yeah, Radhi Jaidi has been working with Saints in the community and academy level since he retired for many years. Tariq Johnson on loan over there. He's he's played in the Premier League for Saints as well. So clearly, it seems that the partnership was based on the actual club, as you say. They're in the USL Championship, and they're we've sort of partnered with them in terms of a club and their first team. And now it seems that we're helping at more of a grassroots coaching and development level, and with academy, and like you said, not just looking for player development, but coach development, and partner in camps in the US and the UK. And you're obviously trying to expand programs for grassroots coaches, which is great. But then also, you're going to be developing that area in for young players and young kids in Connecticut, which is, you'll know more about me than which areas are more into their football and or their soccer, as you'd call it over there, than others. And California might be one, but yeah, I don't know why Hartford was chosen. It might have been that they approached Southampton. I know that Southampton did have something with something going for a little bit of time down in DC a number of years ago. I don't remember too much about it, and remember they go over there for pre-season. There seems to be some sort of partnership going over there, but it's good that they're trying to expand the brand over to the US, because obviously it's a huge market and the MLS is growing. The Premier League is readily available. Obviously, we've been doing the same over in Asia with the chairman and some pre-season games. And it's just good to see that the club are trying to expand the brand. And from a Southampton point of view, that'll be the reason. We might find the odd gem or the odd player, but I don't think that'll be the main reason. Radi Joidi is obviously, ambassador and a strong figure at the club and has been for a long time. He's over there coaching, so the club must think it's worthwhile, and I'm sure Hartford are really appreciative of having a Premier League club with the stature of Southampton contributing to improving them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think JD was on the When the Saints podcast not long ago, and he kind of mentioned it's a big step for him. It's an opportunity for him to be kind of the head coach of something and not kind of do the, that's a first team that he's coaching. That is a fully professional team, not obviously at the level of a Premier League team or a championship team in England, but definitely, a fully professional team where he's going to be able to kind of expand himself as well and better himself, which I think he's been doing. That's a very interesting interview if you have the opportunity to listen. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see kind of how that works out. And you mentioned kind of the, it's maybe more commercial and partnership and less about players. And you mentioned DC as well. That was when we signed the Under Armour contract. We were going into that. Okay. And so they went over to the Under Armour training facility in DC and Baltimore, which are they're an hour away. It's close by American standards. And so they were over there, and the flight from Connecticut to London is about 5 hours, whereas the flight from LA to London, I guess, is about 10 and a half or 11. So maybe that plays into it as well. It's half the distance away, but we'll kind of see how it all goes. Another question, last question from another one of the patrons, and patrons get priority for having their questions answered on the show each and every week. Justin Woodward says, kind of based on the Ralph situation and everything else, what should be the aim of the club in the next 4 years? Where should we be looking to go, or what do you see as happening for the club in the next 4 years, and where should we be shooting for, or what should we be shooting for?
I think we're always shooting for the same thing. I think it's just the manner in which we do it under Ralph Hasenhuttl is a priority. As you said, after kind of Pochettino, we got Koeman and we had the success without bringing through the youth players that we did under Richard Pochettino. Then we had the kind of chaos of and moving away from that philosophy of attacking football. Claude Puel came in, played diabolical football to watch, as Leicester fans know now. But he went along with the philosophy of using the great academy that we have And now they seem to have found, after a couple of poor managerial choices, they seem to have gotten back on track in that Pochettino mould by finding someone who wants to play the pressing football, young players being brought through, exciting football, and I do think that he'll get the results. So I think your viewer's question, I think that we're going to be looking for a top 8 finish. I think we'll be looking to be the best of the rest, and we'll continue to, I would think, develop players and make money, because we're a business, and the way in which, whether we like it or not, we're not one of the big teams that are going to spend all that money. So we will bring in players, develop them, and then sell them on for a profit and continue to do so. What will be interesting is what happens with the ownership, because right now that's kind of up in the air, and I don't see there being a huge plan from an ownership perspective, because I don't think the owner's really too interested. So if you ended up getting someone in who wanted to spend some money, you wanted someone with ambition, or you just got someone in who was happy to maintain Premier League status, then that would obviously have a huge impact. But I think bringing Ralph onto a 4-year deal, I think it would be great if we could keep him for those 4 years whilst having success. That would be ideal, and from that it would breed success. I'm sure of it. But I think if you want to talk about positions in the league, I think we'd be looking to try and get back into European football. Maybe get our hands on a domestic trophy would always be great. That's really the ceiling that you're looking at as a Southampton fan. But I think it's more the way in which they want to do it. They want to re-find that Southampton way, that philosophy, and do things the way that the club feels they should do, whilst obviously growing the brand globally in places such as the States. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. If you'd add anything to that, but like I said, I'm not going to be silly and say in 4 years we're going to be trying to do what Leicester have done and be in the Champions League and all that sort of nonsense, because we're 14th in the table and we just survived from relegation the last 3 years. So it's steady on, but who knows?
No, I think you did summed it up well there, and it's you look at how the team went about coming up from League One and the momentum that was built and the foundation that was laid, and how kind of each season kind of built upon what came before it. And there were some decisions there that were difficult decisions in terms of managerial decisions that people at the time didn't agree with, but in the end proved to be the right decisions. And I think you're going to have to get lucky on some of those where we're going to have decisions that maybe don't go our way, that we don't agree with, but it's going to take time to kind of build to that. And I kind of regret so much looking back at how the Europa League campaign was handled, because it took so long for the team to get there. And then when you're there, you have to capitalize on that kind of run. And we didn't do a great job there. And that is a little bit disheartening, because you saw players go away after that. You saw kind of the momentum kind of, took the wind out of the sails essentially. And I think for Ralph to come in and what they're talking about and what I hope, I guess, is that foundation is laid again and we can build on it. And whether Ralph's here to see it out or we have somebody else that comes in to kind of push that thing forward, I'm there with it. And hopefully, we will challenge for European places, and we will, be up there in the later rounds of the cup competitions. But I would always opt for kind of this gradual improvement until, we get a year or two where we are really, these are the years, and then it's going to come down to an injury or, a bad VAR decision or whatever it is that may take that away from us. But that, I think that's the game you play the long game. Don't try to go for, a year or two of greatness now by buying all these players or doing whatever. And I don't think the club's in danger of doing that. But in terms of my other kind of sporting interests, I've watched the Astros do that the wrong way and completely change things around, and I'm fully committed to that. Aside from the cheating aspect of their game, I don't agree with that. But everything else I'm with. So I think that I think I don't know. I don't think I can put it. I don't think I can add anything else to that because I think you've kind of covered it.
I think what's important, Matt, is that the club gets back to where we were because we lost our way, and that comes through making sure every area of the club is run properly, not just the first team but the academy and all the decisions that are made.
Yeah.
You talked about what could have happened. You know, I honestly believe that had we continued down the route that we were, once we finished 6th with Ronald Koeman and we managed to keep him or replace him with a manager that fitted in with our model, then we were 6th. We were 3 points off of Champions League football and 4th. We just qualified for the Europa League, and during that season we lost the likes of Pele and Mane and lots of key players. We lost our manager, and as soon as we got Claude Puel in, who obviously, you know, he took us to the League Cup final and an 8th place, and it seems like he didn't do a bad job, but you've completely stopped any progress that we've made as a club, because everything was, we'd lose players, but we'd have the black box and scouting network where we'd get a replacement in, and we did that when we had to clear out with Pochettino and all those players, and then brought in Koeman and Mane and Pele and Tadic and etc. And then it just we seemed to lose that. We seemed to lose a manager, whereas usually we do the same thing with managers. Okay, that's fine. See you later. We've got another one lined up. We'll just fit into the model, into the Southampton way. As soon as Puel came in and we were bringing in the likes of Redmond to replace Mane and Austin to replace Pella, then suddenly we'd lost our way. And I think, you know, it's not beyond the realms of possibility to get into Europe, because you look at what Sheffield United are doing after the first season in the Premier League, you look at what Wolves are doing after just a couple of seasons, and that's because they've got a way of running their club, and it's fluid and everything's pointing in the right direction. And I think that's what Hasenhuttl come in, steadied the ship. He's putting all these things in place, and with time, that will breed success, and we can be looking to emulate what those sides are doing this season.
Absolutely. Well, Callum, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show and taking some time to chat with me. I've kept you entirely too long, and I apologize for that.
No, I've enjoyed it. It's good.
If people want to follow you on Twitter, they can do that at Callum Wilson 21. You're also on Instagram at Callum_Wilson 123. You're also part of the Saints AD commentary team, as we mentioned before, and the Under the Lights podcast, and links to all of those are in the show notes if people want to check those out. But yeah, man, I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I know you're planning a trip out to the United States. I think in October. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
obviously, circumstantial, but yeah, if we're able to do it, then yeah, we'll be heading over. I love coming over to the States, and it's such a multicultural place. We could do an entire other podcast on me talking on that situation. We don't have the time now, but and it'd be great to. We've talked about having you on Under the Lights as well. Obviously, Tom's been on this podcast before, and you know he's talked you up and what a good time he's had, and I can fully understand why. So we'd appreciate having you on ours when we could turn the tables and ask you a few questions.
Yeah, anytime. And Tom's great. He's one of the patrons of the show. He's been talked to him for I think I fall into the same thing where people will hear an hour and 10 minutes of this. We've been on the phone for I don't even want to say it out loud. It's a long time, but it's one of those things where you get to talking about things and it kind of goes, and this is again the most enjoyable part of doing the show is just getting to sit down and learn more about the people who support the team and all the different things you do that bring us to this. And hopefully when you're out in the United States, if that happens, then we can make it work for a match. Tough to find a match sometimes. Yeah. It's tough to find a bar on the West Coast sometimes that opens early enough to let you in. But if we get a televised game, then we'll be able to make that work. So I look forward to it.
Yeah. Try and figure out how these 7:00 Saints games work, because I can't even imagine it.
it doesn't work after a 2 a.m. night usually. It's rough.
No, I wouldn't think so.
But that's the thing. In the United States, you can't. The bars close at 2, or in California, the bars close at 2, and they can't open before 6. So you have a window. You can get in at midnight. You get down there at 6 a.m., 6:30. Wait for them to open. But drinking early, you're in for a rough day if you do that. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon, and thanks a lot.
Thanks, Matt.
And that does it for this week's episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Callum Wilson. Once again, you can follow him on Twitter at CallumWilson21, on Instagram at Callum_Wilson123. You can also follow Saints 80 Commentary and the Under the Lights podcast, both of which Callum is associated with. The links to all of those are in the show notes. If you have some time in your podcast listening diary, tune in. It's worth it. As mentioned earlier in the show, football is coming back. Joining me hopefully next week to discuss all of that is the Athletics' very own Carl Anker. I am very much looking forward to discussing Project Restart with him, and kind of looking forward to predicting some results for Saints and what we think might go well or not well, given how the teams that seem to be pressing a lot are doing in Germany right now, given that they're not fully fit. But at least we can make 5 subs. So there's that. If you want to follow this show on social media, you can do that. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFCDelivery. There's no underscore in the Facebook address. If you want all that and more, with links to listen to the show on various platforms and links to all the social media accounts and sign up for the newsletter, you can get all that at southamptondelivery.com. That is the show website. Head on over there if you haven't been there. Access to past episodes and everything else I mentioned before. I would really appreciate it if you stopped by and just clicked on some stuff. Partners of the show help make it possible. The logo was designed by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. And make sure to visit the Southampton page on Twitter for all of your Southampton FC news and needs. If you'd like to support the show further, consider leaving a review on iTunes. It helps a lot. If you'd like to go a little bit further than that, then you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/SFCDelivery. Most of all, I just thank you for being here. I hope you're well, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. So until then, remember that together, we march on.